Ofsted has announced its single headline grade for schools like outstanding or inadequate will be scrapped in a bid to boost school standards and increase transparency for parents.
Well, the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson is in Westminster to talk to us this morning. Very good morning to you, and we're going to get to Ofsted in just a moment, but I did promise the mother of a young teenager who was killed with a ninja sword that I would ask you specifically about knife crime this morning. Ronan Kanda was 16 when he was stabbed to death by a young man who was also 16 years old, who had bought a ninja sword online and had faked his age ID. That's Ronan Kanda there. His mother, Pooja, incredibly powerful interview. Now, what Pooja can't understand is why ninja swords are not going to be part of the ban that comes in this month. And obviously this affects so many teenagers at schools. Education is a big part of it. But are you able to explain to Pooja why ninja swords are not and won't be banned?
Hello, good morning. I mean, my heart goes out to Pooja and the family because we see far too many young people losing their lives in this way because of knife crime. I'm afraid I didn't catch the conversation, the discussion that you had around this. What I can say is that we will act to ban the sale of lots of the very dangerous knives that we see on our street to make sure that young people do not have access to knives. But as part of a wider process that we need to see, I'm working with the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper around a Young Futures programme to make sure that our young people are not being drawn into knife crime, and working with schools is an important part of that as well.
It is. I mean, just to press you on this slightly, because from the 24th of this month, zombie-style knives, zombie-style machetes will be prohibited under the Criminal Justice Act. Thank goodness, and no one can understand why it's taken so long. But yes, the ninja sword that we can see there in the image alongside you, Pooja described in graphic detail what that can do to an individual when it is used as a weapon of murder. And it's horrifying. And yes, people cannot understand why you can't step in and just say, no longer will these knives be available.
It is horrifying, absolutely horrifying, and too many young lives are lost in this way, and we do need to take further action on this.
Will you consider banning them?
Yes, we will. We have further plans to legislate to make sure that young people, anyone in fact, is not able to buy these kinds of knives that are designed only to cause maximum damage, as you describe.
And how long will that take?
We want to move quickly on this. We had clear manifesto commitments around reducing the access that people, especially young people, have to the most dangerous knives, because we are seeing too many lives being lost on our streets, in our communities, as a result of knife crime, senseless loss of life. And my thoughts are with Pooja and with all of the families who have lost loved ones in the most tragic and terrible of circumstances that you just described.
Let me ask you now about your announcement today about reform at Ofsted. In a year's time, there's going to be a broad report card for every school. You're now going to measure education, behaviour, personal development, leadership and management for schools, but you're dropping a single overall judgment from Ofsted. There will be people who say this is popular with the teaching unions, but will make it harder for parents to understand the judgments that Ofsted are making, and will take pressure off head teachers who are coasting and not doing enough to improve the performance of all the children in their school. What do you say to those critics?
I don't accept that. This is about how we drive up standards within our school and make reform that works more effectively. Accountability is incredibly important. We all want to make sure that children are getting a brilliant education, but the system that we've got right now, that one or two word judgment, doesn't capture a school's strengths, but it also doesn't properly capture or shine enough of a light on those areas for improvement. I think it's too low information for parents. I think parents can cope with more than one word, but it is too high stakes for staff as a part part of that. And the new system that we will work with Ofsted to introduce from next September will be a report card that better identifies areas for improvement and development. And I won't hesitate to intervene in schools that are failing, that are not delivering the education that our children deserve, because this government is focused on making sure that we have high and rising standards for all of our children, because they only get one chance when they're at school. The last government, they took their eye off the ball, and we saw too many schools not receiving the support that they need in order to make change happen.
In terms of the information for your report card, one of the things the teachers' unions have been calling for, at least some of them have been saying, is we should abolish the independently marked SATs tests for 11-year-olds at the end of Key Stage 2. Is that something that you are considering, or can you tell us that those independent tests will continue?
I think it's incredibly important that parents, that all of us have a sense about the progress that a child is making during their time at school. So an assessment is a really important part of that. And I want to ensure that children are getting to a good standard of education, for example, when they leave primary school. So the system that we have at the moment, where that takes place, 1 in 4 children leave our primary schools having not reached the required standard in reading or maths. I don't think that's good enough. And it means that when children arrive at secondary school, they're not able to benefit in the way that they should. And I want to see much more in terms of how we focus on driving up those standards. Testing, of course, assessment has to be a part of that. We've launched a curriculum and assessment review that will take account of a range of ways that we need to change the approach to schooling. So, for example, at a secondary level, I don't think we do enough to ensure that all young people have access to music, to sport, to art and to drama. There's been a narrowing in recent years, but I don't think it's about one or the other. I think you can drive up standards in the basics of English and maths alongside delivering a broad and inclusive curriculum that captures those other strengths too.
But just to be clear, your reforms will leave in place independently marked SATs tests at the end of primary school?
I think those tests at the end of primary school have an important role to play in understanding the progress that children have made and then the progress they go on to make within our secondary schools. I think it's really important that parents have that. Yes.
OK, so that's clear. You've talked about an absence epidemic, and we know that fines for parents who take their children out of school are going to go up from £60 to £80 and £160 if they're not paid within 21 days. Those penalties come into effect today. We have lots of angered parents getting in touch with us this morning, and they say, what about days lost to their children's education from teacher strikes, from teacher training days, from inset days, from days when schools are closed so that the school can be used for a polling station? What about the lockdown and the fact that we lost days to education there? It feels like you're going to financially punish parents for actually, in most cases, trying to do good for their children.
Look, there's a lot in that question to unpack about some of the events that you describe, and the industrial action should never have happened because it should never have got to that point. And the last government allowed that to go ahead and was totally irresponsible. And I accept it did cause huge disruption to children's education as something that should not have taken place because they should have resolved it. But to the wider question,
so are teachers equally responsible then for pupils' lower chances of getting high-paying jobs in the future? You're blaming the teachers who went on strike.
No, I'm saying that the government should have taken, the then government, the Conservative government, should have taken a more responsible approach to industrial action and have sought to avoid it. They were happy for it to go ahead, but that's kind of in the past. And what I would say at the start of the academic year, as children return to school, is that the habits that we set and form in this first week in particular are really important in shaping what goes on in the months to come, because the evidence is clear that if children miss time in the first week, that then leads to further absences down the line. And we face a situation at the moment where 1 in 5 children in our schools are persistently absent from school. That is causing major problems, not just for those children, because it damages their learning, but it damages the whole school community as well, because teachers have to catch up.
You're targeting persistent absence then, because you talked in a piece that you did at the weekend about parents taking their children out for holidays or for birthday treats or because they might have a runny nose. But actually, that's not what you're targeting this morning. It sounds like you're talking about persistent absence.
So it's both of those things. All of us as parents have responsibilities to make sure that our children are in school every day. I understand the frustrations that parents experience about wanting to make sure they can go on holiday, the price of a holiday. But I'm afraid that it's just not acceptable to take your children out of school during term time for a holiday, in the same way it's not acceptable to be taking them out for the odd day. But alongside that, we do face a challenge around persistent absenteeism and also a problem of children who are severely absent, which means that, children that are missing the most amount of time at school.
Okay.
Now, that isn't just about parents, that's about schools too. It's about government, it's about all of us working together, because if children aren't in school, they're not learning, and it damages their outcomes, it damages their opportunities in life.
Okay.
And sadly, it damages their earnings in the long run as well. So my message to parents at the start of the school term is, this is a chance to get off on a good foot now, where we can all pull together, make sure that children are in school, which is the best place for them to be, so that they can learn, they can be with their friends, they can develop as individuals, and the patterns that we set do make a difference in the months to come.
Bridget Phillipson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.